It's pretty common for your players, as the heroes that they are, to need to get from one place to another, whether that's from Space Station Epsilon 7 to CD number 12, or from one port city to another in your fantasy game. Your folks need to travel. So how do we deal with travel? Is it a hassle? Is it something that you just blur over and say, oh, okay, you show up? Or is travel a chance to let the story unfold and have some neat things happen? I think it's the second case, and here are some of the ways that I like to use travel in my different games. When I was in undergrad, I used to try to map out and figure out how many miles or kilometers away different cities were supposed to be from each other in games, and then try to figure out how fast did the average person walk, or could a horse go in a single day. And I think that that is just way too much work, and I don't know that that adds anything super interesting to the game. So instead of traveling by distance, one of the things that I like to do is to simply travel by time. How long does it take to get someplace? And that's a lot of the ways that I'll describe things. I'll let players know, be like, oh, it's about a 3 or 4 day walk. It's a 3 or 4 days from you to get from this city to that city over there. Or it will be a 2 week journey at light speed, or whatever that happens to be. So players know how long it's going to take them to get someplace. And it's not about trying to do some kind of, strange how fast are you moving and covering all that type of ground. If that's something that you really want to do, if that sort of tactical aspect of the game is really fun for you and your players, then that's fine. Go for it. But I think it's a lot easier to talk about how long does it take you to get there. And something that's kind of nice about that is it can sometimes take as long as you need it to if there's some story beats or things like that along the way. So that's something that I like to do. Just talk about how long it takes to get from point A to point B. When it comes to actually traveling across those days, I also like to break it up into different sections of the day. Okay, let's do some checks, or we're going to see what happens in the first half of day's travel, and then in the second half of the day's travel. And you can expand that if you need it to. If you're in a space game and it takes weeks or months to travel across, interstellar space, then you can break that up as well. And you can sort of talk about like, okay, well, in the first week, here are the major events that are going to happen on the ship. Whether it's the first half of the day and the second half of the day, or it's 1 week at a time for long voyages, don't be afraid to break things up and go over in general what happens during that section of time, and not having to play every minute of every day's worth of travel. A popular tool to use during travel is rolling on random encounter tables, and I think that those can be really neat, or to break up a couple of options off of that random encounter that you might have. I like that it allows for the randomness, so you don't always know what's coming up, but you have an idea of the different options. But I think it's important to note that you can have some not so random encounters planned in during that travel. And what I mean by that is maybe there's a recurring set of characters that your players tend to meet on the road, and you're planning for that. Or if there's a major plot point that normally you would wait to unveil in the next city, I encourage you to think about, well, is that a plot point that could happen on the road somehow? Let's say you want to introduce one of the miniature big bads of the game, an ongoing rival. Is there a way for that to happen on the way to the next storyline for your characters. And then when they show up again later in cities or again on the road, they've established this relationship. It's a recurring character, it's a callback, and it's something that can happen while traveling to the destination for what the players think the next important story beat is going to be. But you, as the GM, have planned it out, and you've given them a 2-for-1 special on story beats, an important NPC rival, and the next story that they were expecting. So, not so random encounters could be your friend. A big thanks to all of our patrons, but especially to Tucker. If you like what we do here and you want to be a direct part of making this happen, then head over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative and check out the perks of being a patron. Especially in your more fantasy settings, I love to use travel as the place where the players and the party get news and rumors about what's going on in the world. I think of it this way. A lot of the times we might use a tavern as the setting for that to happen, but I don't know, I like the idea of a bartender that's sort of there and is just kind of like, I can tell you what's going on in this neighborhood. I'm a small business owner. I stay right here and I order my stuff and I know what's going on. How should I know what's happening half a continent away? And if it's a small town and you're asking around what's going on in the larger world, I love the idea of a character that's sort of like, well, I grew up over there, and now my parents live there, and I work there, so I don't know. For me, the road is a place where your adventurers are going to meet other adventurers, other merchants, other people who travel for a living, and therefore those are the people that might have news of what's going on in the larger world. And this is a great place for you to drop little clues as far as some of the larger stories and story hooks that you might want your players to take. I also think it's nice to just populate travel every once in a while with just interesting little mini landmarks and mini encounters. Maybe there's a standing stone circle that will offer a buff to the players until their next long rest, or some interesting NPCs. Those could be recurring, it could be a place to learn news, like I was saying earlier, or they just might be an interesting person for them to meet. Not a major character, but someone fun to interact with. They might be able to see signs of a battle from a few days or weeks ago, and that story can wind up coming back later. What are some different interesting landmarks and sites that you might see on travel? And as a GM, you could generate a handful of those interesting things and create your own random table and decide, okay, flip a coin. Do they meet one of these things? Do they find one of these things today? And then roll off of that table. And you can use that table over and over again and just slightly change the description of what you're talking about. And it still allows for some of that fun randomness and can make the travel more interesting than just, okay, roll a survival check. Yep, the morning goes fine. Roll another survival check. Oh, you lose the path and it's going to take you longer. Those things can be fine. I think you pepper them in throughout so that it's not the same thing every single day of the trip. And the last suggestion that I'll use for travel is having it be a chance for roleplay within the party. I love sessions that I call a campfire session. I've talked about this in some of our other videos, and we've used them when we've run games, and we've been a part of them when other people are running games. And I think that they're a lot of fun. The idea behind a campfire session is letting your players know ahead of time, hey, when we meet up tomorrow or when we play next week, it's going to be a session where there will be a time where everyone sits around the campfire and we'll roll a die, or maybe you have a rotating list, whatever it is. One or maybe two of the players are going to tell a story that gives a little insight into their character. Maybe it's some backstory that they haven't talked about yet, or revealing one of their flaws or driving forces for what it is that they're trying to do. I think it's a really nice way in character to get some of that story out. Now, with a campfire session, I do think it's important to let your players know that it's coming. And the reason is whether or not your players are amazing improv artists or not, it gives people a little bit of time to be ready to have that story, to know what it is that they want to share and divulge to the rest of the party. So I don't like using campfire sessions sprung on players last minute. I like to let them know. And for a little bit more fun, I do like the idea that I've seen and I've done myself of using a deck of cards. And the idea is that each of the four suits relates to a different type of story you might need to tell. The clubs, in fact, could be something to do with a rival, and the diamonds could have something to do with a driving purpose. Hearts could be previous relationships. You see what I'm saying there? You can work those out. And again, if you let your players know ahead of time, say, hey, these are the different types of stories, it can get your players thinking about those things that their characters went through and then ready to tell that story. Maybe not like written out and read to everybody, but just gone over a couple of times so they're ready to tell it sitting around the campfire. How do you like to handle travel in your games? Is it something that you just gloss over because you don't think that it's tons of fun? Or do you really like the travel and you really get into it, calculating every half mile that your characters travel and rolling specific checks and encounter tables every step of the way? Let me know what it is that you do to handle travel in your different games. I'd love to read about them in the comments below. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. And until next time, I'm Ryan, and this is Roll for Initiative. Bye. Ripley, 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 Ripley.